This is the Shaders Design Editor. If this is your first time here, we'll do a real quick walk around and just take a look at what's available to you. This is going to feel very familiar. It's a lot like other design tools like Figma or Paper or Wonder. It's got the same general layout, but there are some Shaders-specific functionality that you might want to be aware of. So here I am, brand new project. This is called Untitled Project, and I have one shader in the project called Untitled, so it's very new. Very quick, first thing I could do is just name this, right? So if I wanted to name this Intro Project, I could just double click on the project name, call it Intro Project, and do that. Same goes with naming shaders and naming layers once we have layers. I'm going to double click this, and I'm just going to call this Shader 1. Very, very simple, right? Layers are components. So in shaders, components build up everything that you're working with, and you can find those components down here in the insert toolbar. We have categories for textures, which are your usual starting points. You might want to start with a gradient or a dot grid or any one of the available textures here. Then we have text you can actually write onto the screen. We have shapes, which are useful for masking, blending, and for dynamic props if you're going to be driving prop values based on certain visual output. We'll get to that in a later video, but just know that shapes by themselves are pretty basic, but they can get quite powerful. Then we have shape effects. So shape effects are, I think, unique to shaders in the sense that we support both 2D and 3D SDF-driven shape effects, and these are physical materials. They look really, really interesting, and they can create some really unique effects. You can use a bunch of different shapes, both 2D and 3D, and you can load in your own SVG file. It can even be like a 2D effect, like a 2D glass, liquid glass effect, or you can make it a 3D effect, like an extruded logo, and show that in carbon fiber, for example. Some real fun stuff that we could do with shape effects. Again, we'll get to that in a later video. We also have stylization. So once you have something on the screen, here's how you stylize it, here's how you change it, and layers that you can apply, almost like adjustment layers that you can put on top. We have a category for interactive effects. Now, yes, by default, all shaders effects are interactive. You could wire any prop to any state and make them interactive, make them animated. The interactive category is just specifically for those which are obviously interactive by default. They are following the mouse, they're liquefying the screen, you've got smoke that is moving around that you can interact with, a bunch of different ways we could use these, but by default, they're interactive. Then we have distortions, just as you imagine distortions to work, like bulging, mirrors, the ability to look through glass and see fluted glass distortion on the screen. We have blurs, which are, I think, pretty self-explanatory. You can blur in different ways. And we have adjustments, again, self-explanatory, just things like brightness, and if you want to increase the saturation, or if you want to apply a tint, you can do that in the adjustments panel. And last but not least, we have media. You can upload your media, you can browse through what you've already uploaded. And honestly, I think the best way of working with media is just to drag a file from your desktop directly into the canvas, and that works just fine. That will literally put it directly into your shader. So that's that. Let's take a look at the shader itself. I'm going to add a linear gradient here just for the sake of having something visual for us to look at. And here's our shader, right? So if I just deselect that, we have shader 1 as our active shader. In the top right, we have dimension preview. This is not the dimensions that the shader will export at. Shaders are by default dimensionless. It is a canvas that gets rendered to your DOM when it actually goes to ship. And you decide how you connect that canvas, how you wire it up. You set the width and the height on that canvas, you position it how you want to, and that's how your shader will ship. The idea of these dimensions is to give you a preview that is close, if not accurate, to how you plan on using it within the editor itself before you get to code. So if I'm going to build a hero section and it's going to be full width, maybe I'm doing a 1440, but I want a slightly shorter hero section, you can design something at an intended resolution that you intend to ship it at. But of course, browsers are responsive, it's going to shrink and whatnot. So just know that the export dimensions here are for preview purposes and not what you would actually implement in code, but it's easy for your agent or you to implement that in code when we get there. In the bottom right corner of the shader, we also have two color options. P3 linear and sRGB are your available color spaces. I would say nearly all the time I find myself using P3 linear. It's a good default to use. And then we have tone mapping. So in this case, linear is just what we set to. I find myself tending towards either ACES Filmic or towards neutral. I feel like Filmic gives you just a little bit brighter blown out space. Neutral gives you just deeper colors, and I like neutral, so I'm going to set it to neutral. You don't really notice much when the only thing here is a linear gradient. Now, let me select that linear gradient, and you will see a few more of our available settings. On the right-hand side, we have our props panel. So this is where you will find how to control everything, how to configure every single prop. Every different effect, every component has different props available to it. Some of them are similar low. You will find the transform section, and basically most components will have a transform section. You will also find an appearance section in most props to control, the basics like opacity, blending, masking. We'll get to masking and all that later, but that's where you would find it in the props panel. At the top here, you also have the component name, a link to the component documentation if you really want to go read that for some reason, and some zoom controls so you can zoom to a particular shader or to a particular zoom level. On the left-hand side, I forgot to mention it, you can also just toggle away the UI, which gives you a better preview. So if I toggle this away on our sort of hero section template here, we can actually reach 100% on the screen, so I can see this in 1:1 pixels, which is really, really nice to see sometimes. Let me go ahead and zoom in and kind of give you a basic intro to the Infinite Canvas. So this is shader 1, right? And let's say I go and I modify some of these colors. Let's say we like something like... pick an idea, like maybe something like that. Yeah, sure, we'll go with that. This is my shader. Now, I may want to try different variations of this. I may want to explore. I may want to, even export video or export code that has different ideas in it. So what I can do is I can click on this and I can right-click, duplicate. And you will see we get a 2-up display on our Infinite Canvas. And all we've done, this is sort of like Figma or any other design tool, is we've got this frame that represents our shader and we can play with it in the space. So here's shader 2, which has its own linear gradient, right? It's been copied. I can change those settings. And there you go. I've got 2 different shaders side by side. Really great for trying out different variations. But back to dimensions, it's also great for trying out different dimensions. So if I was to say, oh man, I'm really happy with a shader effect that I've made, it works well in the hero section on desktop, but I wonder how that's going to look on a mobile device. You can change the dimensions to something that's more representative of how that shader is going to look on a mobile device and see, hey, does it still hold up? And in this example, the horizontal linear gradient doesn't actually work too great for mobile. Maybe I want to change the direction of mobile and make it more diagonal. So you can catch things like this in design. And on top of just catching it, you can actually export code and tell your agent, this is the desktop version, this is the mobile version, and use different props and different values for different responsive breakpoints. So having an infinite canvas like this works really well when you're trying different variations and when you're trying different responsive breakpoints. You can always zoom in on the active shader. There's a button up here for that, for handling that. In this case, I've got this, I'm going to double click and call this mobile shader. I'm zoomed in on the mobile version. I can also choose to zoom out to show everything all at once. And you can duplicate as many times as you want, right? Like I'm going to duplicate this a bunch of times. You have other controls if you right click. So here's, for example, just a random smattering of shaders. I could right click, I could zoom to fit the active one, zoom to fit all of them. I could clean up the layout and just, put that into a little bit more clean structure. And you've got tools just to help you align things nicely as you're playing with them. Honestly, this is just personal preference stuff. You set up the workflow way you want your workflow to work. None of this stuff really gets exported at the end. So let me just go back to our shader 1. And let's say, okay, it's time to either share this with a client or with coworkers. There's a share link option. I could click on the share button down here, and that would give me a link that I could share out for people to preview. Or I could click on export. Now, when you're exporting from the design editor, this is a pro feature. It will require a pro subscription. You can export code, or you can export video or image. You can do it in right-click too, right? I could copy the image for this. It would copy it to the clipboard. I could paste it anywhere that I wanted to, just as a PNG image. Or I could, let's look at video first. I could click on the video option. I could export, let's say, a 10-second video at 2x resolution. Or I could click on export. Export, obviously, is where you go from design to production, and it's super easy to do. So all you do, come in here to the export panel. You've got Vue, React, Svelte, Solid, JavaScript, and Framer at the time of recording this video. And you could just install the shaders MCP. You could install using the simple command npx shaders at latest, install MCP. It will install it for your agent, and then you could literally just authenticate, log into your account, and ask your agent to install this particular shader, and includes the name and the ID so the agent can find it because it's logged into your account. And it knows everything on how to install it, right? It can take it, it can install it into your hero section, and then you could come back and be like, oh, actually, this mobile section, you'd copy either this ID or you just copy the whole thing and say, use this for the mobile version. And it can swap that out for you. Or if you really want to, if for some reason you're feeling like doing it yourself, you can just copy the component code manually. The code that's shown here is clean component code, nothing messy, using our official components, which are already heavily tested for performance. So you're going to get production ready performance out of this whole thing once you actually go to ship. So that is the export process. That is the interface. We've covered a lot in this video. This has been about 10, 11 minutes. But hopefully now you've got a little bit of a sense of how to actually browse the editor, how to work with things. And in the next video, we're going to take a look at how to compose effects more than just a single linear gradient on the screen.